Hi folks, how you doing? We already have another game finished at the World Championship match in Sochi. Today it was the turn of Viswanathan to play with white pieces, and he played once again 1d4. Magnus Carlsen replied with the knight f6. Again we have this c4 e6, and again knight f3. Anand doesn't want an Imzo-Indian to be played, and well, it was Magnus's turn to decide what to play here, and he didn't go for the Queen's Gambit declined. I mean, he suffered an instructive defeat in game 3, as you may remember, and he doesn't want to repeat that experience. He plays b6 instead. Queen's Indian defense, very solid, not a surprise really. g3, the main line, absolutely here for white, and bishop b4 check is what Carlsen plays. There's more than a way to place your pieces with black pieces here. Actually, there is this very trendy, at least it was some years ago maybe, bishop a6 move, forcing white to defend c4, say with b3, then they're giving this check, bishop d2, and now going back with both bishops now to e7, and after bishop g2 playing bishop b7. For the positional gourmets out there, this is supposed to be quite an achievement for black to have misplaced white's pawn and bishop. But anyway, this wasn't played. Bishop b4 was played, check, bishop d2, and again bishop goes back to e7. Black argues always that the bishop on d2 isn't really that well placed, and he didn't really waste tempo there. Knight to c3, bishop goes on b7, bishop g2, and here Carlsen plays not the most common move. The most natural looking and the most played in the database is to play castle, short castle, control e4, very typical and position here for black. Instead he plays c6, a move which may be hard to explain or understand if you're not familiar with the structure which black is aiming for at first. I mean, you played b6, bishop to b7, and now you're voluntarily blockading the bishop on b7 by playing the pawn to c6, and you're I mean, removing this possibility for the knight to go to c6. Well, all black is aiming for is to play d5, the pawn to d5, in very safe conditions. He's allowing white to play e4, but d5 is going to be the answer. And note how the pawn from c6, the one on e6, the knight and the bishop from b7, from behind the pawn, are supporting this d5 advance. So this is black's idea, and this is what was played: e4 and d5. Now there is some tension in the center. This reminds somehow of a semi-Slav structure, I guess, where one could argue the bishop on g2 isn't that well placed, or maybe it is, I don't know. Anand had to choose here how to play in the center. He took with the e-pawn, c takes, and played knight d5. And now we had Peter Swidler and Nepomniachtchi today on chess24.com commenting live stream on this game, and it was Jan's opinion that white can never be better here. So this was just I mean, Anand was already thinking quite a bit in this position, so this is clearly good home preparation by Carlsen, and he was getting what he wanted. It's a kind of a solid position, not being able to have winning chances right out from the opening. Of course, he doesn't go for that kind of positions usually, but it's a solid, it's a playable position. Both players castled here, and knight c6 was played, and as Swidler was pointing out, there was lots of potential here in the position of massive exchanges and the fast equalization of the position, which is certainly true. I mean, it seems there are examples of this being very fast draws, but of course the players didn't go for that. They played for a while. C takes d5 was played here, and now there is a choice for black. He must choose take the correct decision. For instance, e takes d5 probably wasn't that precise, because d5 may be somehow weak and white has more active pieces. He's already attacking d5 with 2 pieces. The knight on e5 looks better than the one on c6, say, so probably this wasn't very precise, but what Carlsen plays was rather good. He takes first on e5, gets rid of the centralized knight on e5, and here once again it is white to On the choice, Anand played d6, interesting move. Of course, he's not losing material. He's now attacking two pieces and makes black think how he's going to organize his pieces. Instead, if he just takes on e5 after, say, knight takes d5, black doesn't seem to have any kind of trouble. This is very solid, restricted somehow position for black, but seems very solid, rather good for black. So d6 was played here, just trying to create some nuances, and the knight correctly went back to c6. Now d takes e7, of course, and no brainer here, queen must take on c7. On e7. If knight takes, well, oops, there is a bishop hanging on b7. We don't want to make that move, so queen takes e7, and there is an interesting position, somehow balanced. White has the bishop pair, which is good, but he also has an isolated queen pawn, which may be somehow weak. And black's position really seems very solid. He's completed development, his rooks are connected, while white's bishop on d2 doesn't look that great. The queen is still in the middle of the rook, so fairly balanced position, I guess, with some possibilities for both. Probably white could be the one who could be better here, slightly better, but not that much. Bishop g5 was played, h6, and here d5 was played by Anand, definitely trying to get some advantage, because exchanging would be too dry, I guess. A couple of possibilities for Carlsen. He chose to go with the knight to a5, interesting, now activating the bishop on b7. The other very natural looking move was to play probably rook a d8, pinning the pawn through the d file. Then queen a4 may be followed. The knight must move somewhere to d4 maybe. If bishop takes, queen seems to be the one who takes to defend the bishop, so to defend the knight on d4. Then probably white is taking the rooks to the center, and we'll see what happens. The bishop on b7 is not protected, so there is some slight pin on this diagonal, but black shouldn't be doing that worse here. Instead, knight a5 was played, as we saw, not rook a d8. And after bishop takes, queen takes, Anand simplifies the position. He takes on e6, queen took, rook e1, winning the tempo, attacking the queen. Queen went to f6. The position is rather simple here, but all the point is that white has slightly more active pieces. The rook is on e1, the bishop is better on g2, and there is difference about the knights. The knight on a5 is on the rim, not looking that great, and white's knight is on c3, willing to go to the center like this, knight to d5, attacking the queen. And it seems white has some pressure to his thanks to his active pieces. This is the first possibility where players had to calculate this queen takes b2 possible chance. Carlsen may take this probably. White could get some activity, some compensation for the pawn with rook e2, for instance, queen a3, but I'm not sure how to continue here in a logical way to try to exploit this miscoordination of black, or queen on a3 and knight on a5. Probably white has enough to equalize, but nothing more. Maybe it is to be analyzed, certainly. But Carlsen didn't took the pawn yet. He took on d5 with the bishop. Bishop takes, and now there is the difference. We see the difference between the minor pieces. Certainly the bishop looks much better than the knight, which is on the rim, can go only to c6 right now, which is defended by the queen. And on the other hand, we have this beautiful bishop on the center, attacking the rook and controlling all the board through the light squares. This is what is giving Anand certainly some slight advantage, and black must be precise here, he must be careful. Rook a d8 was played, pinning the bishop, and Anand went with queen f3, offering a queen exchange, which wasn't accepted. It would be quite a classical endgame, this one, with a good bishop against a bad knight. Still, with the rooks on the board, should be playable for black. This is not lost or anything. White is of course better, playing for two results probably, but with rooks on the board, black still has chances to hold this game. But whenever both rooks are, all rooks are exchanged, this would be very classical game. Capablanca would say this is already over. So it would be pawns on both flanks. The bishop must be much better. The rook, it is better centralized than the knight, which is on the rim, etc., etc. Very classical endgame principles. But instead, after queen f3, Carlsen took the pawn on b2. Well, it seemed like somehow a risky position, risky choice. Rook ad1 was the instant answer by Vichy, and he has compensation for the pawn. He has all his pieces very active on the center, and there is some concrete threats already. All of them aimed to do well, having to do with the knight and the queen being very far away from the king's defense. And once again we see the pattern where the king is almost defenseless here, left alone, and you have active pieces. You may have attacking possibilities, like things like queen f5, bishop e4 could be already some ideas. But here the possibility, if black just passes, just makes the move like a6. The main threat was probably bishop takes f7 with check, and well, of course you cannot take with the rook because d8 is hanging and this is over. But if king h8, white probably is exchanging rooks and playing against this weak king. Light squares, note they are very unsafe around this black king, so this should be much better for white, although some precision is needed. But after thinking for a while, we must say Carlsen played this ugly but probably necessary queen f6 move. You can bet this wasn't his main plan when he took on b2, but he had to reduce material here, and he gives up his pawn structure. He has to make this concession of creating isolated doubled pawns on the f file, this isolated and winged pawn on h6. Once again we still have this bad knight against the good bishop, and it's white to move, who has the chance to go to the 7th rank right away. And this seemed really very interesting position for Anand. This is the kind of position Carlsen would love to have with white pieces, to try to torture his a better endgame, to try to torture his opponent for hours. He played king g7, precise move, and here Anand went on to take on a7. King g2 was suggested here by Svidler like an improvement. If now knight c6, which was played in the game later on, note that the bishop cannot take there because the rook is hanging on d1. Now rook c7, knight e5, and maybe white could take on a7 in better conditions. Well, it was to be proved, but certainly this looks very safe for white. You're playing for two results, but instead rook takes a7 right away. This is what Anand played, and people, commentators are agreed there that this was much less critical, and Carlsen went out to blitz the move showing that there was a draw here. Plays knight c6, bringing back the knight. Once again the bishop cannot take, the rook is hanging on d1. This is attacking the knight, and the rook, which goes to b7, but now knight b4, attacking the bishop, forcing the rook's exchange on d1 with bishop b3. And after knight takes a2, there wasn't that much to play on anymore. They're just, well, the rest of the games is a mere formality. They just keep moving, but this is clearly a draw. No way to advance, to improve the position enough to have an edge for either player here. So we're just gonna see the moves: knight c3, bishop f3, f5, king g2, rook d8, rook c6. The knight went to e4, bishop takes, f takes. Well, nothing more to be played here, but they still went on to finish this. f5, g4, rook d2, g takes, e3, rook e4, and after rook takes f2 check, king g3, Carlsen took an f5, and they signed the score sheets agreeing to draw, and still having an even score at the World Championship match after 5 games. Interesting game here today for Anand. He had some slight advantage out of the opening, out of his Queen's Indian, but Carlsen really defended very precisely and very well, so it was a draw. Thanks for watching.